image of an onav, amedumim, like a copy of an onav. Haroyim, the evil ones, shezacharna l'mayla, shehem miklal hatzavuyim, they belong to the world, to the people of chameleons. Tzvuyim means colored, but it means chameleons. Asher ein ba'olam ra mehem, that there exists nothing more evil in the world than them. Okay, that's it. Okay, there's ein. Okay, your fake anova. Okay, is ein ba'olam ra mehem. There's nothing worse in the world than them. I mean, it's a powerful phrase. I love that phrase. Okay, so if you're fake frumkeit, and Ramchal would not
subscribe to.
So not subscribe to fake frumkeit. Again, maybe it's too strong. I don't know, because a lot of times, you know, a typical high school kid that starts, you know, your Rebbe inspired him. Before you know it, this typical high school kid is walking like a Rosh Hashiva. You know, you know. So what are you going to do? Knock it down? I mean, I would, but probably it's not a good idea, right? Meaning, the Ramchal in me would say like, hello, get real, right? But the American Rebbe in me says, amazing thing, you know, but we're breeding in a certain sense, possibly breeding, you know, tzivuyim, you know, the chameleons, you know. I don't know. Again, these are difficult questions. Okay, moving on. Back to where we were. So we're trying to figure out. So he tells us that there is good precious and there's bad precious. And now he's trying to tell us what is a good precious. What is a good precious? So he tells us that again. So let's start again. There is no physical worldly pleasure that does not have some sort of a sin attached to its heel. Derech Moshe. So he's telling us what an example is. The food and drink. When you cleanse them from all forbidden, Isser Achila, right? In other words, there's no meiser and there's no treif and there's no, every possible. It's glat kosher, right? It's glat kosher. Amnam milui hakeres. However, if I stuff myself, moishech acher of prikas oil, it pulls afterwards. It's called prikas oil, casting off the yoke, right? I feel like a fat pig, and I act like a fat pig. Umishte hayayin, similarly, being drunk, moishech acher of aznos, comes with znos, ushar dvorim roim, and other evil things. Kol shekain b'yois ha'odam margil atzmo lizboya ma'achila ushtiya. Also, furthermore, if somebody is margil atzmo, if somebody habituates himself to be constantly satiated from achila ushtiya. Hine impam achas yechser loy regilusoi. If one time he is missing from his habit, yikav loy, he feels pained, right? He feels unsatisfied. V'yargish ma'oid, and it's very strong feeling. So as a result, he starts pursuing more in terms of business, right? And he becomes aggressive in acquisitions. So he should have a table that fits his needs, his desires. And from there he will move into territory of cruelty or robbery, right? Umishom el hashvuos, and from there it will lead him to make false oaths. And all other sins that follow. I don't know what other sins follow, but right? But basically, right? If we worked yourself on Nikiyas, right, and you said to yourself, okay, I understand that when I'm too aggressive in business, right? And I really want to sell this house, and I really want to sell this house. I'm so close to selling this house. I realize that I start lying, and I don't want to lie. So you figured out, Nikias, how to not lie in business, and you worked on yourself, right? And you conquered this midah, because this is what we're right. Preachers is you conquer this midah. You already you figured out how to be very clear and straight up with your sellers, and you self-control, right? But at the same time, comes the next month, right? And then business is doing great, and you're able to be knocky, and your business is booming, and everything's great. So you buy yourself a wonderful, big, fancy house, right? So now, before that, business was doing great, and you were putting money away into your savings account. So when the months where the business wasn't doing great, okay, so you could take a hit. But now, every month the business is not doing great, you can't take a hit. You're going to be behind in your fancy mortgage payments, or your insurance payment, or your wife's whatever, and your wife is saying, what's going on? And your kid's tuition and school, right? And at that point, you started selling again. This is a really great house, and you sell again the lemon, right? And you reverted back to
where you start.
To a level that you already conquered, right? So so what got you there? What got you there is that your desire to have your super duper fancy mansion. Why did you want your fancy mansion? Why not, right? Why not, right? Because and really the reason is why not, right? For somebody else, it's not that there's nothing. Is there any isser in having a fancy mansion? Of course not. What's wrong with it? Where does it say you can't have a fancy mansion? There's no isser in having a fancy mansion. So, but for different people, for some people, say, okay, I came in a fancy mansion, I'll get out of a fancy mansion. But for me, it's not a whatchamacallit. It's not a nisayon. It's not a nisayon. I'm fine with living in a basement, just like I'm fine living in a fancy mansion. I could afford right now a fancy mansion. Tomorrow I won't be able to afford it. I'm also fine, right? So for that person, there's no reason to indulge, quote unquote, in a fancy mansion. For another person who sees that his avodas Hashem is very much totally in his gashmias, so why is he putting himself, right? So again, this is where Prishus is going to come in. I'm jumping ahead. Is that it's going to be custom tailored to each person's weaknesses, right? Potential weaknesses. Okay. Kol sheken should be yoso the margila. Yeah, we did that. Okay. And as a result again of his habituation to gashmias, he removes himself from avoida. Umina Torah, umina tefila, mash oyo nifter mikol zeh mitchilosei lemoshach atzmai behanois elo. What he could have, could have avoided all this trouble if he limited himself in these hanois. Regarding this matter, they said in Ben Soyer Moira, the Torah al soif daito. Right, the whole idea of Ben Soyer Moira, right? We have this kid who's already at a young age is indulging himself like right, like an adult. So we say, the Torah al soif daito. Again, it's not the point whether Ben Soyer Moira didn't happen, right? But the idea is that there is what he wants to take from there is a progression, right? In other words, right? There's a gateway drug, so to speak, right? And the gateway drug there's a chain reaction. So Gashmias is your gateway drug, right? Gashmias is your gateway drug. Fine. V'chein al inyan znus omru kol aroi soita b'kilkula yazir atzma min hayayin. A person sees a soita b'kilkula and he sees a wonderful woman, a great girl, and look what turned out, and so he understands that it's not. Again, if he's smart, he understands. It's not because she's any different. Nowadays, he's soita b'kilkula. They say, it's because she was I'm not going to use bad words, but right. But a true chacham sees that we're all the same. We all have our taivas, we all have our nisyonis, we have our problems. So time for me to work, just like she could have worked on her nisyon. Now it's time for me to work on my nisyon, right? So v'tira, I don't know how far we want to go on this. before we kind of delve deeper into this. So because it's all one piece. So it's really, it's hard to discuss it until we really grab all of it. Okay, I don't know. Let's keep going. Now, and see that this is a great strategy for a person. In order to save himself from his Yetzer Hara. When a person is already involved in the Veira, it's very difficult for a person to conquer it. So therefore, when he's far away from the Aveira, Yashir Atzmoi Rochak, he should remain distant. Right? It's easier to remain distant from an Aveira than actually to do something that pulls you away from the Aveira. Because then it's going to be more, just the opposite, it's going to be more difficult for the Yetzer to pull him towards it. So let's keep going. He's going to give more examples. Intercourse with the wife is mutter, heter gomer, completely. Amnam kvar tiknu tvila lebale kerin, but chachamim were misaken tvila for bal kerin. Now we don't hold of this gezerah nowadays. I'm not sure if he actually, then does that mean he himself followed it? I'm not sure, right? But right in the Gemara times there was such a gezerah. Again, it's machlokes. I think it was accepted or not. It was tefillah, but right that every time a man had relations or any kind of ejaculation, he would have to go to the mikvah. And since it was complicated to go to the mikvah, so you would think twice before getting together with your wife, because I have to look for a mikvah. If I can't find a mikvah, I'm gonna have all these problems, right? So why are they right? So why are they doing this? There's nothing wrong with being with your wife, but the problem is you're gonna be. We're protecting you from yourself, so to speak, right? We're protecting you from yourself. You should be a mensch. Don't be a tarnagel, right? Don't be a pituch. Right. Okay. So fine. So that's a complicated. Again, why are we protecting you from yourself? Okay, so big deal. So I'll be a tarnagel. Right. So, meaning, is it a shalom bias? Is it a shalom bias takona that Chachamim made, or is it a ruchnius takona that Chachamim made? Meaning, I think it has two components. In the Tzloshen, shaloi talmidei Chachamim mitzui meitzal nishehem ketarnigoyim, right? Talmidei Chachamim, right? Specifically, talmidei Chachamim should retain. Right, on one hand, you're walking around like a holy rabbi, and you look. Everybody says, "Look at you," and you're saint. But you go home, and you are, a fiend. You can't, it's mutter, but you look. But it creates a disbalance between your picture outside of your home and your picture in home. And so Chachamim said, "Listen, balance yourself out. Don't be don't
Is
be
it really about a picture?
What?
Is it really about a picture? I mean,
no, not picture. I don't mean picture,
right,
but
right.
just for your shalom bias issues. Your wife should, be a man. Don't be how to say it, right? So that's So I would have said maybe that's a shalom bias issue. On the other hand, maybe it's a ruchnius issue. Listen, it's mutter, but don't overindulge, right? Because like you said, you're going to habituate yourself, and you're going to always need it. And if you're going to always need it, you're going to, when she's going to be a nida, maybe you're going to be, so maybe it's like a chaka for the issue of nida. That's what.
Imagine this Talmid Chacham having one thing on his mind.
That's what
he's not going to be Talmid Chacham then. He's going to be thinking about going home.
Well, that's not what. Okay, yeah, so that's another right. That's also a great possibility that
Right.
that he needs to. Yeah, nowadays
Control
you would
it,
have said
right.
just the opposite. Certainly, there is an idea, just the opposite. This is a Hashem gave you this outlet, so to speak. So just the opposite. If you are Talmid Chacham, why should you be thinking, in the base of Medrash, thinking about, what's going to
Right.
happen at night? The Gemara has a concept called pas b'sala, right? Pas b'sala means bread in the basket, right? If you have your bread in the basket, then even if you're not eating, you're still less hungry,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just the opposite, I would have said if you're Talmid Chacham, go ahead and indulge yourself. So this way, get out of your mind and go learn, right? Anyway, but let's just see which we really shouldn't be jumping the gun with this, but let's see. Even though the action itself is mutter, however, he kind of ingrains himself this taiva. And from the taiva, he will get to the isser. So meaning he doesn't see what I just said, that by getting it out of your system, you're actually diminishing the taiva. The understanding is, and this is the Gemara is going to bring the Chazal for it, and like the statement of our sages, there's a small organ in a man, must be royev, if he satiates it, it's hungry, marivoy saveya. If he makes it hungry, it is satiated. Right? In other words, the more sexual enjoyment, the more you want it. Less of it, the more you can control it. That's the idea. And even when it's proper to have intercourse, right, and it's a good time and it's proper, like I know, Rabbi Eliezer, they said regarding Rabbi Eliezer, that he would reveal a tefach and he would conceal 2 tefachim. And he would appear as somebody who was forced by a shade to do this. Why? So that he should not have enjoyment even at the time of his enjoyment. Right? Again, he's not saying that this is an obligation, right? He's just laying out the map. That there is an idea of removing yourself from Gashmias, right? There's an idea of removing yourself from Gashmias. Well, what's the idea? The idea is preventing Isra. Okay? Right? So when is it? So the question that remains. So when is it okay then to enjoy Gashmis? You can, if you're gonna say that every act of Gashmis has an avera attached to it, then okay. So when is it ever okay to enjoy Gashmis? Right? Okay, let's keep going. When it comes to clothing or adornments, the Torah didn't say specifically anything regarding how beautiful they look, right? If you want your Rolex, the Torah didn't say you can't wear it. As Torah said, if you have clothing, don't have kilayim. If you put on tzitzis, was kulam mutorim, and then whatever clothing you wear, you want to wear polka dotted suit, no problem. As long as it doesn't have kilayim, no problem, right? However, milo yeda is it not clear to everybody? When a person wears something outstandingly beautiful, timoshech agaiva, he will have gaiva. He may lead to gaiva. Gam haznus yigbalba, and the gam haznus yigbalba, and also znus is in its boundary. Okay, very interesting line. The gam haznus yigbalba, meaning right till now, in Nikias, I'll come back to this again. Everything here really needs to be drilled, but I just want to get the whole picture. But in Kavod, he brought up Malbushim, brought up clothing, I believe. I'm sorry. In Nikias, when he was talking about Kavod, he brought up Malbushim. I believe, or unless I'm mixing it up already. Right? So because we were discussing if Kavod and Gaiva are the same thing, right? And we decided that Kavod is a certain physical pleasure, right? Like a taiva type of a thing, while Gaiva is a separate internal self assessment, I guess, right? And then Kavod was the hardest thing to kind of, it was the hardest thing to avoid, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so he didn't say specifically about clothing, he just says Velule zeh, if not for his desire for kavod, kvar hoya ha'odam misratz lechol mashiduchel, a person will be willing to eat whatever is available. Lil boish mashi chaser rosei, and to wear anything that conceals his nakedness. Right? So, which sounds like, because there is kavod, is why I want to dress fancy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Kavod is an expression. Clothing, because malbushi kavod we call it, right? Honorable clothing, because clothing is an expression of kavod. Clothing is an expression of kavod or desire for kavod, right? Now over here he says, from fancy clothes to moshech hagaiva. Right? He should have said, no, why didn't he say Timoshech HaKoved?
Yeah.
Right? Why does he say Timoshech HaGaiva?
So back to that whole discussion.
Right. Right. And then he says, V'gama znus yigbol bo. And also znus is attached to it. Meaning what I understand is, if you look at a typical young man or young woman, when they're dressing in their latest trends, what motive, meaning they're motivated by gaiva or whatever it is, but there is also an element of I want to feel sexy, I want to feel attractive, right? There's a certain right, so that's what he's saying, like gamaznos igbol, meaning that it's not an unrelated, the way I dress also has something to do with that parsha as well. Okay, fine. So let's see. Milvad, besides Hakina, V'atayva, V'ha'oishuk, and Nimshochem, Kol Mashu, Hu Yokar, Alo Odom Lahasigu. Besides jealousy and desire, and also not violence, but how do I say this? When is cheating. This cheating. Okay, V'ha'oishuk, cheating, and Nimshochem, Kol Mashu, Hu Yokar, Alo Odom Lahasigu. Anything that is difficult to obtain, right? So again, if a person wants a fancy clothing, he'll try to, he'll buy it, wear it, return it to the store, whatever. Okay. When a person, when the Yetzer Hara sees the person's Yetzer Hara, which is connected to his heel, when he fixes his clothing, and he fixes his hair, this one is mine. Right? This is really, the Gemara says this regarding Yosef Atzan. Okay, so again, let's keep going. Hatil v'adibur, also til, which is, I guess, traveling, right, strolling. V'adibur, and speaking. Im eina midvar iser, if you're not talking about isurim, v'adai din Torah mutar, certainly from the Torah's perspective it's mutar. Amram kam bitul Torah nimshach mimenu, but how much bitul Torah comes from people just discussing for hours politics or whatnot? Kama min lashon hara, Kama min hashikarim, how much lashon hara, how many lies. Kama min leitzonos or leitzonos. V'oimer berev dvarim lo yechel pasha. Too many words, no, you cannot avoid sin. Klal hadover. So back to the general idea. So again, he talked about, just to summarize. So he spoke about different examples that you see can lead to problems, right? Different mutter things that have a various at the heel, right? So first we talked about achila and shtia, right? Achila and shtia. Achila and shtia. Then he talked about be'ila, right? Relations, physical relations. Then he talked about malbushim, clothing. And then he talked about speech. Okay, so four things. Four things, right? So again, food and drink, relations, clothing, and speech. Okay, all right. Okay, fine. Klal hadover kivan shekol inyanei olam einam ela sakonas atzumois. So the summary of the matter is that since all the elements of the world are nothing but great dangers, eich lo yishubach. How can we not praise mishi yirtzel limolit mehem, somebody who wants to escape from them, mishi yarbe l'harchik mehem, who wants to increase his distance from them. Ze inyan prishus atoif. That is basically the logic of the good type of a prishus. Shelo yikach min ha'olam. Okay, this is an important line. Shelo yikach min ha'olam. The person should not take from the world b'shum shimush shehu mishtamish, in any use that he is using mimeno ela ma shehu mukhrach boy, only what is necessary for him. Mipnei hatzoreich. Because of the necessity, something that is naturally he desires, and he desires, he needs. Okay, so again, that's what I say. We might end up at the same place, right? But the journey might be different. So at the end of the day, what does a parush take from the world, right? What does a parush take from the world? Only what is necessary for his sustenance, right? Right? You only take what is absolutely necessary.
I mean, do we eat matzah and water entire year? No, we have chametz. Again,
Which will
you can theoretically survive in. He says here, only what is necessary. So he's that guy that has kodesh kuchleba.
Yeah, I guess.
And this is just beginning of Chassidus.
Right?
All right.
Yeah. משום שימוש שהוא משתמש ממנו אלא מה שהוא מוכרח בו מפני הצורך אשר לא בטיבוי אלו. So let's see the bad, and let's see, we're going to balance it out. Okay, and this is what Rebbe praised himself in his statement that he made, that he did not enjoy from this world even beds bakatana, despite the fact that he was a Nasi Yisrael. Right? I'm sorry. Where did I lose it? Im hayoyse Nasi Yisrael v'shulchon shulchan melachim, and his table was a table of kings. Be'achrech likar nisyusa, which was necessary for his stature as a Nasi. And like a sage said, Shnei goyim b'vitnech, right? When Rivka got the prophecy that 2 nations are in your wounds, Ze Rebbe Vantoninus, so it's Shnei Geyim Bevitnich, meaning 2 giants are in your womb. Ze Rebbe Vantoninus, right? 2 princes, Rabbi Yehuda Nossi and Antoninus, the Roman prince. Shaloi Posak Mel Shulchonam Loi Chazeres, like Kishus. Well, it's not. They didn't, right? They did not. Their table did not lack any day of the year, neither chazeres nor kishus, right? No, well, it's not none of these vegetables. Neither in the summer nor in winter. Becheskio Melech Yehuda Kamoikein. Similarly, Becheskio Shara Maimorish Zacharti, all those statements that I made. Kulam Mikayim Moerim Sheyesh LaOdam Lifresh Mikol Mashu Tainu Galomi Laman LaYipol B'Sakonoso. That a person has to remove himself from any physical enjoyment, worldly tainug, enjoyment, l'man lo yipol b'sekonoser, but to avoid falling into the danger.
Mikol Ma.
Yeah, what's left time? I have to finish. We just have to run through the whole thing. Okay, so first it's going to say like this. So v'im tishel v'toimer, and if you're going to ask me im kain eifo, if you're right, shezeh adover miktarich umuchrach, that this concept is necessary, right, and it must exist, and it's necessary for a true avodas Hashem. Lo mo'ila gozru alav chachomim k'mosh gozru alas yogos v'takonash gozru. So how come the sages did not decree such a thing on everybody? Right? If this is so right, and so universal, so why isn't it universal? So the answer is clear and simple. That Chachamim only decreed a gzeira if majority of the congregation can withstand it. Right? In other words, majority of the congregation cannot be Hasidim. Okay? Again, very strong statement. Majority of the congregation cannot be Hasidim. Which is like strange. Why can't majority of the congregation be Hasidim?
Cannot mean it's not given. They're different structure, different.
Well, we have a concept Eina Ma'aretz Chosid, right? Eina Ma'aretz Chosid.
In theory, Ma'aretz can learn and become. Cover the Shulchan Aruch, stay away from.
But majority of the congregation, you cannot have a congregation of geniuses. Just
okay, so it's about
right
brain power.
It's certainly big. Yeah, you certainly have to have some sense. It's going to be confusing because later in the end of the Sefer he says that really everybody has the ability to be Kaddish in some form. But I don't really I never figured out exactly how that balances out.
Okay,
because the majority of the congregation cannot be Hasidim. But it's enough for them that they will be tzaddikim. Okay, there's a note here about this. What does it mean, majority? Ach hasridim, and there's another important line over here. Ach hasridim asher ba'am, right? The select minority of the people, hachafeitzim, that desire lizkois, to merit, likarvosoi, to closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yisborach, ulizakois b'schusam l'chol shar hamoin, and they also thereby to give merit lizakois, everybody else, right? So a chassid doesn't only benefit himself; he benefits everybody else who cannot be, right? Since you are given the ability to be a chassid, right, and you become a chassid, you therefore also share your schus with all those people that, that die lahem. It's enough for them to be tzaddikim, right? Hanit lebom. hanitlebam, l'chol shar ha'amoin hanitlebam. He will give schus to all the populace that is nitlebam, meaning that is attached to that, right? So this is the idea of a hierarchy of a, of not only like Mesilas Chasidus. There's an idea of Borapar Chasidus. There's a Rebbe and there's Chasidim, and the Rebbe pulls the Chasidim out.
Right. So that's what I should figure out. The Rebbe, I think the Rebbe is born being a Rebbe, meaning he's given.
Okay.
Some
So
sort of is that what he's getting
no,
at?
he's
right.
not.
Right.
No.
So I didn't expect it, but that's what it sounds like.
No, it sounds like the idea is that the individuals who have the ability to become really close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, they elevate themselves and they elevate all of the other people that come along with them. So not only do they elevate the physical world, which you told us back many pages ago, that when you overcome the physical world and you elevate yourself above the physical world, you actually pick up the physical world with you. Now he's telling that the Hasidim don't only pick up the physical world with you, they also pick up the rest of the populace with them too. Right? So lahem, to them, to these individuals that have the ability to climb higher, lahem magia lekaim mishnas chasidim. They have they have the responsibility. To be mekayim what's called mishnas chasidim, asher lo yuchlu lekaim acherim, which others are not able to be mekayim. Heim sidrei haprishus heila. It's these orders of prishus are for those individuals. Ki bezeh bachar Hashem, because this is what Hashem chose. Shekivan she'efshel le'uma she'tiyah kula shova ma'ila achas. It's impossible. It's physically impossible for a nation to be on the same level, right? So in other words, if Chasidus is over here, but this guy climbed over here, so he just basically possibly created a new level of Chasidus, and all these guys on the bottom just remained Chasidus, right? So it could be, it's also, besides being objective, it's very possible that it's also relative. Okay, so so therefore he's saying, right, since it's she'ef sheleuma she'tiyah kula shova ma'ila achas ki yesh ba'am madrega is ish lefi sichloi, because there are many levels, right, each according to his seichel. Hine lepachas yichidei skula. So therefore, at least there will be individuals, right? Select individuals shimotzu should be found asher yechinu es atzma achana gemura, which will, work on themselves, a complete working. Validei muchonim yizku gam habilti muchonim, and via those that prepared themselves, right, meaning overcome themselves and reach those levels, they will be mezakeh. They will give merit to even those that did not do that process. Bilti muchonim, those are not prepared. Ela havoso yizborach b'ashroas shchinosoi, even though they themselves are not worthy of Hashem's love and His Shechina, right? So because of the, right, so he introduced a new element over here, Hashra Shchinos, which didn't play a part, which is really more by Kedusha. He's jumping the gun. He's saying that Chasidus is really also just it's to get you to that end stage, which is Kedusha, which is Hashra Shechina. Okay, so in other words, he's really saying also that without Chasidus, you don't get Hashra Shechina. Right? You could be a tzaddik, and it's enough, but you don't get what's called ahavosa yisbarach. You don't get Hashem's love. Okay, inyan shedorsh zechron lebracha be'arba minim shebelulav. Again, the same idea which comes from the arba minim shebelulav. Yavoyu eilu v'chaper leilu. Right? Let these guys who have the smell and the taste be mechaper these guys who have neither the smell nor the taste. We find that the Navi said to Rabbi Yisroel ben Levi, "B'maisa de'ula bar koishev, k'shehashivoi v'loi mishnah hi, af hu amar loi v'chi mishnahs chasidim hi." Again, I don't want to get into it right now. The point is that this idea that is mishnahs chasidim. There's a concept that, right, is mishnah, which is basically regular halacha, and there's mishnahs chasidim, which is above and beyond halacha, so to speak. Okay. Ach haprishus harai. I'm going to have 2 more pages to just finish up this monologue. Ach haprishus harai hu kederech hasecholim. The bad prishus is the way of the fools. Asher lo dai she'einam loikchim min ha'olam ma she'ein lahem echrech bo. Right? Not only do they right? It's not enough for them that they don't take from the world what they don't need. They don't take from the world what they don't need. But they also remove from themselves that which they do need. Okay? Again, this is a key line here. Right? What is the fool, what he calls the fools? I don't call them the fools, but he's saying the foolish precious is when you go too far. Right? So the foolish precious is when you go too far. Meaning, when I'm putting words in it, maybe it's not clear right now, but I'm putting words, is that it will be individual based. Meaning you said matzah and water. No. If you're not, so to speak, on that level of precious, for you matzah and water would be would be terrible, right? Because you have to know your hechrech, what you need for your best, right? Your job is, the point of precious is not to remove yourself from the world. The point of precious is, I want to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm trying to, optimize my avodah. The point is optimization. The point is not in itself to destroy any gashmis. The point is optimize the avodah, right? So in general, optimization of avodah comes from limiting gashmis, right? But limiting is still within the framework that it has to optimize the avodah. If you are going because you want to be a tzaddik harbe, right? You go beyond that level. So you're not optimizing the avodah. You're optimizing your own self. Pat on the back. Look how much of a tzaddik I am, right? Okay, so that's what he's saying. So it's right. Right? They will afflict their bodies with strange things. Hashem doesn't want these things. Right? And furthermore, the sages said, it's forbidden for a person to afflict himself. Right? And regarding tzedakah, they said, somebody needs to take tzedakah, but he doesn't take. That's considered murder. Hashem made a person to a living soul. You have a nefesh, you have to give it life, meaning you have to feed it. Right? Somebody who sits in the tainus is called a sinner. Right? He told us before, somebody who sits in the tainus, Nikra Kodesh, is called a holy person. Somebody now is telling us called a, right? So what's the get? Right. It says, the Gemara says what the get is. When we do what the Gemara answers, but the loy motzi mitzayer nafshe. It depends on the person, right? If a person is not eating and is constantly, right, he wants to be holy. I'm going to be holy. I'm not gonna eat. And the whole day he's thinking about food, and he's thinking about food, and he can't learn, and he can't daven. So who needs that? That's a choyte. You didn't eat, and you didn't right. Vehilal hoya oimer goymel nafshe ish chesed. Hillel used to say regarding the pasuk goymel nafshe ish chesed. Ish chesed gives to his soul alachilas haboker, that you have to have breakfast, right? Breakfast is a gashmis indulgence. No, you have breakfast, you're mensch the rest of the day. If you're mensch the rest of the day, you're more likely to be a better Eved Hashem. It's not, right? So the precious is not a thing in itself. It's a very pragmatic thing to get to your goal. He used to wash his feet and face, hands and face, for the honor of his creator. He learned this kal v'chomer from the kings. So now you get the true, klal, principle, general principle, shekol ma she'eina muchrach la'odam b'inyanei olam hazeh, that anything that is not necessary for this world, for the matters of this world, roi lo shivrash mehem, a person on the level of Chassidus should separate from them. V'kol ma she'u muchrach, but anything that is necessary, lo me'ezeh tam she'iyah, for whatever the reason may be. Again, this is the key phrase, me'ezeh tam she'iyah, for whatever the reason may be, right? Sometimes it could be for a position, right? Why did if Rebbe did not enjoy from the world, why did he fill his table up with all the dainties, right? The answer is, it was necessary for his position, right? Kivan shehu muchrach loy, since he was needs for it. Im hu perish meno harei zechoita, if he separates from it, he is zechoita. Hine ze klal ne'eman ach, right? This is the general principle. Ach mishpat aprotim. However, the laws of the details, al pia klal hazeh ein mosur el shikul hadas. But the details really depends on what's called shikul hadas, on each person's balance, right? Balancing the weight. Lefi sichlo yehul ish, and according to a person's seichel, a person is praiseworthy. Ki efshul lekabitz kol haprotim, it's impossible to gather all the details. Ki rabim heim, because there are many. Ve'ein seichel adam yochel lehakif al kulam, and a person's seichel cannot really fully, capture all of them. Ela dover brita, but one thing at a time. In other words, he's saying is that, right, in general, Chassidus in general is going to be shikul hadas. It's going to be shikul hadas. It's going to be each person figuring out. There's no map for Chassidus really. That basically, because if there would be a map, then it would be back to Nekiyas. It would be still the Shulchan Aruch. The point of Chassidus is that it's individualized. It's this sridim asher ba'am. It's these individuals, like individuals who are holding on this level. They have to use their own shikul hadas in order not to fall into the trap of falling into the bad Chassidus, right? Which is in a certain sense a big challenge too.
Right. It's a
right.
fine balance.
So, in a certain sense, it comes out that you're trying to avoid the challenge of Gashmius, but introducing a new challenge of overdoing it.
Falling off the cliff from the
Right.
other side.
Right. Exactly. Falling off the cliff from the other side. Correct. Okay, there's a lot to discuss here that I didn't even get to. There's Ramban, Kedoshim Tiyu. Does it fit into his picture? Doesn't it fit into his picture? But that at least we read through it.